The Nice House by the Sea, issue 1, James Tynion the fourth, with Alvaro Martinez Bueno on the art. All right, so
what a jump back into this world.
it's so funny because I was starting this and I was thinking, oh, it's been a while since Nice House by the Lake ended. Like how much am I going to struggle with this? And obviously, once you start this issue and you realize, okay, it's setting up another house, right, that is literally by the sea, and it's setting up a whole new cast of 12 characters. And one of the things that I was going through my head, obviously it becomes a bit clearer later in the issue, but I was like, okay, this is another house, but it's not Walter who set this one up. It's someone else named Max who seems to have the same abilities, right? So what's the context for that? Is this like, are these houses happening at the same time? And the ending seems to imply they are, but like a lot of questions were running through my head trying to like piece together exactly what the context for this house versus the house from the original book were. What's going on with these aliens or whatever they are that's Walter and Max, and going from there.
It feels very much like when you're introduced to the tailies on Lost, where you're like, oh, there was something else completely going on in this part of the island while we were so focused on our castaways.
A little bit, yeah.
And so, because Tynan throws you into their world really quick. We get a very familiar opening that kind of opened like the first issue of Nice House by the Lake. But then it kind of gets established to who some of these characters are and how familiar they are with each other. So it throws you into the world right away, but you don't get lost because he does such a good job at kind of explaining who these characters are through dialogue and kind of what they're about. So yeah. Very happy introduction here.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't do the thing that Nice House by the Lake did where there's like this vision of the future where things are going to go eventually. And obviously that was a lingering question I had in my head as I was reading this as well. Is that, well, there was definitely a future to get to in Nice House by the Lake. Is this going to in any way link up to that? And obviously by the end of this issue it does. Like the ending cliffhanger is a big connection to that book. But as I was reading this, I'm like, okay, right, we're establishing these new characters. We're establishing that Max met these various people. And I think what was sticking out to me more about this house and the 12 people involved is a few things. First of all, I'm just looking at that. There's like the third page after the first little flashback where the actor is like just imagining all the skulls on fire and whatnot of like the end of the world. It's just, I don't know, really good Terminator-esque stuff. But what I liked about that, or what I was noticing about this, I should say, is it was introducing all these characters, is that they all seem a lot more like successful than the characters that were in Nice House by the Lake. And what I mean by that is that the actor is literally a Tony Award winning actor. And then there's like an artist who's won awards. Then there's like a scientist or a mathematician who's won awards for teaching. There's a professor who's won all sorts of Nobel Prize awards. Like everyone seems to be like the best of the best that you could probably do.
It's almost like if you're building a bunker to rebuild society, these are the type of people that you would want versus the people from Nice House, where they were very similar. There was a scientist and a teacher and all this other stuff, but they were regular people. They weren't these people with all these like acclaim behind them.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know? And I think what's interesting about that though is that clearly filling out a lot of the roles, there seems to be a similar goal in filling out the house in terms of, okay, this is the type of people we want. But across the board, everyone here seems to be a much higher profile person in the world they come from. And I think, I guess what the question I'm getting at with that is that by design? Well, I think it's by design, but is it by design because there's a different goal with this house? Or is it more the idea that, and it's implied later on, that like there'll be a winning house, right? That's something that Walter says in a flashback later, that another house will win, which suggests that there's different aliens, but each having their own house with their own 12 guests, and one's going to win somehow. How do they win? Who the hell knows? But that's another thing to get into. But what? Because if it isn't a sort of, if it wasn't like, oh, Max, whoever's giving out the orders for this, right? If they didn't give Max this instruction to go for the best of the best, and then asked Walter to go for, okay, fill out the same kind of roles, but with much more, like I say, normal, down-to-earth kind of level of people, right? Not these big superstars who were effectively famous in their field for how good they were.
Yeah,
right?
higher profile. That's what I was digging for.
Right. But what I'm saying is, though, is that something that they were ordered to do differently, or is that different tactics that they're using to try and win this, whatever it is, a game or something, science experiment, whatever it is? Because if it isn't something they were told to do, and this is actually a case of, no, Max has went for he's literally just been the boring person who's went, okay, one of the best actors in the world, one of the best scientists in the world, one of the best artists in the world, and he's just filled it out with the creme de la creme. Whereas if it was Walter's choice to not do that, and he instead went for like, oh, people that I've built up personal connections with, and people that I care about who fill into these different archetype roles, then that's an interesting distinction between, like, that already suggests some things about who Walter is versus who this Max is that's running this house.
It seems like, to me, just from this first issue, that Max is very hands off and kind of just lets them do what they want to do within reason.
Well, hold on. There's a big thing you need to say there, though.
Yes.
This house seems to be a lot more aware of
what's going on,
what the status quo is, because they all know the world's ended. They know they can shape reality to whoever they want. Now, I know that our characters in the first book did kind of get to that point to some extent.
Eventually, but it took them, But
here, it feels like they all know the score. They're kind of bickering about the weather as if, like, oh, we can choose, we can have it be sunny and beautiful every day, but it's a storm today, and that's because one person asked for it to be a storm. And that becomes this. It's almost like a group of housemates arguing about what channel to put the TV on.
Right.
And one person's like insisted on something that everyone else doesn't want. But in this case, it's the weather, which is kind of a funny like escalation of that type of argument. But that's the sort of things they're bickering about. There's clearly some tensions amongst these characters in some way.
There's even a sinister housemate that I feel I'm getting bad vibes from. Whereas, in the other house, I just felt that these were all friends. And you might have a friend that gets on your nerves more than others, but they didn't feel like they were working against people. Where here, I feel that this writer, he's got bad vibes from the start. The one that wants it to be dark and stormy and all of that. Like,
I also, I mean, I could be wrong, but I get the impression that there's more buildings here. It's like this more spread out over like a sort of compound.
So right now I'm looking at all the characters on the last page, right? It's that, thing that they did in the last book.
Yeah.
It looks like the Greek coast, right? Where there's a lot of, rocky outcrops. But you're right. There's a lot of almost like villas, like these different areas that are connected by walkways.
Well, what was making me think this was actually earlier on in the book. It was like right before the list of all the names. There's a page where all their symbols are kind of like darted around at the edge of an island. Yeah. That was making me think, they're all spread out in this one. It's like a bigger area as opposed to just them all living in one house.
Right. Well, and I guess that also shows the philosophical differences. I also am taking this as this is the philosophical difference between Max and Walter, whereas Max is a lot more transparent with everything. Walter was trying to hide it. But whereas Max is hands off, Walter was almost too involved with the test subjects, if you will. And that's what's led to some issues.
Well, here's the thing. Max clearly has interacted with some of these people before, but is he really personally attached to them in the same way that Walter was? I'm not sure. Right. That doesn't really come up quite much. But I think this issue does a really good job of establishing some of the differences with this house. For example, there's the artist character who's basically been given the power to reshape the world. So that's the character the others go to. It's not Max they go to say, hey, can we have the weather be different? They go to the artist and then he kind of crafts it. But they're also going to the artist to like alter their own appearance. We meet a woman who's like almost 60 years old who's like posing nude for the artist, but the artist is like turned her back into a 20-year-old. And that's something that seems to have been going on. There's a character early.
An absolutely jacked 70-something-year-old history professor.
Yeah, you've got him, but you've also got the character that tries to sleep with the actor, the writer, he's the one that wants to storm. But he mentions in his little bio when you first meet him that he's 82 years old, but he doesn't look 82. And he's like, hey, we should have sex. We were eventually going to do it anyway. And it was established in the first couple of pages that the actor is gay, or at least bisexual anyway. But, you know, like, that's your first hint of that. I like that it hinted that, and you're like, wait, because he even has a line where he says, it's not like I'm the old man that arrived here. And I'm like, wait, are you all in your, like, peak physical condition or something? Like, is that something that Max did? But then, of course, a couple of pages later, we find out that the artist is using this sort of fold-out sort of thing with all the symbols on it to alter people. And yeah, like this woman, the scientist she is.
She's a scientist, Quinn. Yeah.
Quinn's like bragging about how great she looks and how she's like, oh, why is anyone being a prude here? It's fine, it's just us. But later on, there's the other woman who's like upset, like the senator who's like, oh, that's a 60-year-old woman almost who's acting like a little girl, and she's been sleeping with different members of the house. I saw her leaving somewhere the other night, and like it really sets up some of the tensions and how different this house is to the other one. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities in the sense that they've got the control that the other house, in theory, started to learn that they had, but they seem to just have accepted it. They seem to be living. There's some tensions, but they're not like constantly fighting and trying to get out. Whereas in Nice House by the Lake, as they learned what was going on, they were like, some of them were trying to fix things. Walter kept erasing their memories to like try and fight that. Here it kind of feels like these characters, maybe it's because they're egotistical or whatever, but they've all just kind of accepted that they get to live, immortal style.
They were the chosen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
They were the chosen ones. We do what we want, and the actors kind of not comfortable with that, because as you look in the way that this book uses like emails and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that's something. Yeah, we were going to get to is that there's like a draft of an email that he didn't send, like because it's hovering over the yes, delete this draft. But it was basically him turning down the invitation and knowing what it was as well, like knowing that the world's going to end. And I think I'm just going to I've had a good run. I don't want to like live forever. I want to just go and be with my family and die. But he doesn't send it, right? So, but he had that thought, and it does make me question, like, okay, he was on the borderline, right? He almost dropped out, but it makes me wonder: are all these other people who are at this particular house, are they also egotistical that they were all quite willing to like be saved? Like, at the end of the world, I get to live because I'm special.
I'm important.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Yeah.
And I think too with the senator, one of the things that stood out was she says that the scientist didn't act or look like that in her 20s, and it's disgusting. So it's kind of like she's been able to edit herself to the person she wants to be instead of having to be the person that she was, and I think that's also very interesting. And set in this world, like what does that mean going forward?
And she's one of a few characters who are like, obviously the writers changed themselves. That was mentioned before. You've got this jacked 80-year-old that we mentioned before. Like there's at least 3 or 4 characters in this group who have basically used the powers of God effectively to basically be what they want to be. So it definitely feels like this is the more vain house in a lot of ways.
Yes, I see. I thought there was a misprint of the age of the historian, because like you're introduced to him, and he's introduced doing bench press with like a lot of weight, and you're like, wait, 76? No way that guy's 76. And then you keep reading and you find out, they're altering their appearance. Oh, okay, so they've fully taken advantage of all of the stuff in the house, kind of like the comedian did, and he started ordering everything that he could want. Right. And then just when you can get everything you want, it becomes kind of meaningless. These guys were just like, well, no, we get to do what we want. We're going to make it work for us.
Yeah, and again, the openness here is that this Max character shows up on the boat where the actor's sunbathing, and is like, hey, the meeting's about to start. Can we go the quick way? And he's like, I don't like it, but sure, let's go. And yeah, he just uses his powers, like his alien powers, to like sort of walk through the back code, if you will, of this place, and they just sort of appear in the sort of the steps at the beach with everyone else. Which again is very Greek, actually. That was a good thing to point out. So yeah, all this stuff is like they're just like, hey, let's toast to the fact that we've all been here for 2 years. Of course, the actor looks quite somber. The art does a good job of saying that he's showing that he's conflicted as he says cheers with everyone else. You know, especially contrast with the colorful background behind Max as he's making the toast,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's just almost in black and white with his reaction. So, really good stuff. But yeah, so it's like the compromise was that it'll be sunny during the day, but then it'll storm at night, and if anything, that's more moodier and dramatic anyway. So we get this great 2-page layout of like the rain and storm and all that, and like the actors up at the window looking out. And he grabs his coat and says, "Why not?" Which, you know, does kind of imply that maybe he's taking the writer up and he's offered to go have sex. Because the writer's whole thing at the start was like, oh, eventually we're going to get bored and we're going to have sex. You're probably good at it, so let's just do it.
And the writer was like, yeah, you've had a lot more experience of it at this. I'm sure you've had dozens of lovers. He was like, geez, man, like, cut the guy a break.
Oh, dear. Yeah, so it's a whole thing. And it's mentioned here that the artist is like, he can alter things, and Max has given him that ability, but there are limits, right? He's not meant to go too far with certain things, and we don't really know what those limits are, but the writer basically convinces him to like push it a bit further. Like, you know, this storm's great, but let's go a bit further. And the artist is like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's make them feel it. And this leads to a big cliffhanger where all this lightning striking, and the actor's out in his raincoat on the beach, and one of these colorful portals opens up from the lightning strike, and out walks... Actually, not yet. Sorry, hon, I'm jumping ahead. When he gets hit with the sort of the lightning from this portal, it leads to a flashback. This actor knew Walter.
Yep.
This is our first sort of big... Other than just the overall premise, obviously. This is our first direct connection to...
So, the thing that got me there where I had forgotten... So, I'm sure if I had reread Nice House by the Lake, it would have clicked. But at the beginning, he says, me and a friend used to have this game where we talk about how we thought the world would end. And
that reminded me of the last book as well, because that used to come up all the time, yeah.
Right. And then when we get to this point, I was like, oh, the friend he's talking to is Walter. Because that's how Walter picked the people, you know, to be in his house. So, of course he knew Walter. That was the friend that they played the game with. And I was like, oh, okay. Very well.
Yeah, he's lying on a couch with Walter, and Walter's basically saying, yeah, the only others that know about it are these, you know, 2 or 3 others, and they only remember when I let them remember, again, which is referencing stuff from the other book. So yeah. But the actor says to him, but you're supposed to bring the best out in people, right? What happens if we're not the best people? So again, that idea of the self-doubt has been something that's there for this character. And that's when Walter says, then I guess the other houses will win. So not just other house, there's more than 2.
Houses, yeah.
So it really suggests that they're competing for, like, to prove that humanity can do something, or like, is there a bigger meaning or purpose to this, or is it just for their entertainment? Like, I genuinely don't know at this point. But super, super fascinating, though, having this connection that one of them knew Walter, and Walter intended on bringing this character to his house, but wasn't able to, is really quite... Like, did he get poached for Max? Did Max poach this character from him?
Like, has there been some backbiting stuff between the people in charge, you know? And yeah, it's very, very curious.
Or not even in charge. I don't even know if they were in charge. They may just be the players. Like, they're arranging the houses. They're the players of the game, effectively. You know? Yeah.
Well, I meant in charge. I meant because we don't know aliens. You know, whatever interdimensional.
Oh yeah.
Whatever. That's who I meant.
But I definitely get the impression that Max and Walter are the top of the pyramid, right? There's someone above them for sure.
They're definitely middle management.
Yeah. So yeah, then the portal acts all wonky. There's a bright light, and basically, like, the actor says, "Walter, is that you?" And the final page is 3 of the characters from the first book, and one of them says, "Oliver, you're alive," which makes me think that Oliver probably was mentioned in the first book, and I just don't remember it because you know, because they talked a lot in that last book. There was a lot of flashbacks, a lot of letters being written to each other, talking about people they knew.
Well, there was that, and the fact that there was 2 artists, right? There was a new one, and then Reg. Reg is the one who says that. And the fact that Reg wasn't supposed to be there, right? Because Walter violated the rules and had an extra person there.
No, I remember
the other writer here too, which is Nora.
That's what I was just about to say. This middle character's the writer.
Yep.
I cannot remember who the other 2 are immediately.
Yes.
I must admit.
So one is Reg, who they talked about earlier, right?
Right, that's on the right.
He was the artist. The other one was the artist that we're first introduced to in the first issue. She was the one that was supposed to replace Reg, because Reg couldn't go. She was the newest of Walter's friends. I don't remember her name, but she was the redundancy.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Interesting. So obviously this is a big cliffhanger, because this is the thing. Halfway through this issue, I was like, oh man, this is so good. Like, I'm okay with this, like, being like mostly just its own story, its own house, and then maybe it'll connect with the other one at the end or something. But no, Tynion hit me with it at the end of issue 1. Here, these characters who went wandering and were trying to break down the system, because we never got like an ending with that, right? It ended on this sort of open cliffhanger. We knew there had to be more, and here they are at the end of this issue. And what do they think of these other characters and how they're using this house? Do they think? I mean, and what are they going to learn? I know they learned some stuff from Walter by the end of last series, but do these characters know more, and they're going to find out some more stuff? Like,
yeah, it's because this group, Walter's group, forced Walter's hand.
Yes.
By the end, so they almost tricked him, and so it's like, well, is Max a different kind of person? That but I guess we'll see. But yeah, this is almost like Nice House season 2, right? Like it seemed like it was going to be its own thing. And then boom, you drop in, because I was like, like you said, if I don't see any other characters, that's okay, because this is this house's journey. How are they reacting? And then to have these 3 show up at the end, and you're like, oh wow, an honest surprise.
Don't get me wrong, it was always going to connect eventually. I just thought it might go a good number of issues before it did, but and maybe this is still the right choice, because this is very exciting to have this at the end. It's like, okay, we spent most of an issue treating this like its own thing, but obviously it's not. Obviously this is the continuation of that previous book, and if anything, it does feel like a season 2. It feels like I won't spoil exactly what happens in it, but the opening scene of Lost season 2 did something. I mean, even season 3 of Lost did a sort of similar thing, where we start off in a character we don't really know, and then by the end of this first scene, it's like, oh, this is how it connects to the rest of the show, and then we go forward. This is kind of like that.
You're talking about the Who's in the Hatch?
Yes.
Okay, so I thought. It's been a while, so that's why. You remember that type of stuff better than I do when it comes to TV. So
I don't know why, but it's, yeah.
Hey, I remember obscure comic book character names. You remember actual story beats in TV shows. So
yeah, I mean, there was so much in that first Nice House series that I'm excited that nothing was hard to follow here, and even if I don't remember character like names and whatnot, because I would never go into this, still flowed really well. The art here made it very obvious who these characters were at the end. This was a great cliffhanger. I think it did a good job of setting up at least our new main character from this second house, which is the actor. If nothing else, because even like him at the start feeling guilty about being here, he's talking about remembering that he talked to this young guy at a bar, and he asked the kid the question, hey, like, if you only had 18 hours left to live, what would you do? And this young guy explained that he'd probably go back home and see his little brother, because he's going through a rough time and he's not really been there for him and he feels guilty. And he basically gave him every bit of money he had on him. He gave him $500 from his wallet and said, go home and do that. Which makes me think that this was literally 18 hours before the end of the world. He was basically saying, go do it. And he's like, I always wondered, did he ever go? He probably didn't, but I kind of hope he did. I hope he did that with his final 18 hours.
Because when a stranger gives you $500, you're not thinking in the right mind.
Yeah. He probably went and did something stupid, but that sense of regret really is sold there. So it's interesting that we've got a character here who seemingly remembers everything that he ever did with Walter, and what might come of that when he starts talking to these characters. So yeah. But it's all very good stuff. Honestly, it was a stark reminder very quickly of how good this series was. Obviously, I think Tynion has a game plan in mind. Like, he's got a roadmap for what the whole story is, and we're in phase 2, right? That's where we're at.
And it was ready to pick back up, because I forgot this was coming out, and then it dropped this week, right? Like we talked about it a little bit before because of the solicits and whatnot, but still, to drop it into this world and have stuff come back, almost like sense memories, that was a nice feeling. So Tynion's really good at that.
Yeah. Well, having said that, now that we're saying that he seems to remember everything, I almost wonder if he didn't until he got hit with that lightning. Like that memory with Walter felt like it was coming back to him because he got hit with that. So
and we know Walter likes to erase memories too. Right?
Walter does love to erase memories. So
that's his thing.
I do wonder if that's like this memory had been erased because he always just did that with his friends, and this was it coming back. Yeah, that's interesting actually. Yeah. So very excited to see these characters intermingle and talk about what's going on. And will Max be a threat? Are we going to get Max versus Walter at some point because Max threatens like Walter's people? I don't know. There's some interesting ways. Are they going to hide here? Are they going to try and pretend that they're not here so they can sneak around for a bit? I don't know.
Right. Maybe we'll see other houses through them too, because they have access to the control room. Well, they did, right? So maybe that's how we're going to get introduced to these different houses. But, yeah. So
super interesting. So just to sort of run down the cast here, just because I'm in the last page now with all these names. So we got the Doctor, who's Hector Aguilar, which, I mean, I'm never going to remember these names, but the roles are the best they'll do.
Yes.
We got the priest, who we didn't really mention. It was briefly in one scene.
Yeah, he was very funny because like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing body modification. Like, hey, shut up, holy man. We'll do what we want. And I was like, oh, well, that's an omen. Like,
We got the scientist, Quinn. That's the woman who made herself much, much younger.
Yeah.
We have the singer, Cherry Campbell, who we didn't mention, but she was in one scene. She was out sunbathing, even though it wasn't sunny, and then she was happy when the sun came out.
Yeah.
But she's like a Taylor Swift level megastar. That was like her blurb.
Yeah.
Right?
All of those.
The historian, Henry Allen, which I'm not going to lie, I thought of The Flash a little bit.
Yes, me too.
The senator, Margaret Collins. And then we got the actor, who's the main one we've been following. And we got the mathematician, who we also saw. He was the teacher style character. And then we briefly also saw the artist, who's Soko Tanaka, who did kind of give the side eye to the actor. The actor waves at her at one point, and she just kind of turns her head and doesn't really entertain the interaction. So there's a couple of them that don't get much time in this first issue, and that's fine, because they're obviously there's a lot of characters. We can't spend too much time in all of them. But yes, very intriguing. I wonder if we go back to the other house or if we see those other characters at some point. I bet we do, but maybe not right away. So exciting.
Very much so. These characters definitely, it feels like there's a theme to them versus Walter's, which seem much more personal. So
yeah, I mean, like I say, they kind of fill the same slots in the sense that, okay, we've got a scientist, we've got a doctor, we've got a whatever, we're filling all the same kind of roles, but yeah, it's like, it's instead of just having a singer that it's Taylor Swift. Instead of just having an actor, it's I don't know, Dustin Hoffman or whatever. I don't know. It was only 33, so that's a bad example, but whatever.
Yeah, but they can look how Oliver they'll let. Maybe he wants to look like Dustin Hoffman now. I'm not going to judge.
Oh no, because Oliver specifically says he doesn't want to do that. He says he's happy with the way he looks.
No, I know. I was making a joke at the if he wants to look like old Dustin Hoffman, I'm not going to stop him. He has free will.
Yes.
But I think it's curious that there is a holy man here. There's a priest, a person of faith, in this grand experiment, and I wonder how that factors in with Max, because there wasn't in the last house.
Well, there wasn't a priest, but I'm pretty sure there was one person who was religious. That sounds familiar. Yeah,
but someone religious versus somebody that is dedicated their lives to that. But then again, that's someone that's dedicated their life to a craft, just like the singer, it's the senator, right? So
yeah, that's the thing. This is the extreme version. Like, what's the? Yeah. I mean, he's not a superstar. I mean, I suppose you could have the Pope if you really wanted to go to the top of the line, but like, what's the like equivalent to the normal religious person in this house? It's like there's a priest, someone who's full on,
right?
So.
I want more about the Jack historian, because that speaks to me.
You like history and you like
lifting weights.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Obviously, fantastic first issue. Got me super pumped for it. And obviously, we've got all this other DC stuff going on. It's nice to have this weirder, different non-superhero book as well. But what are you giving Nice House by the Sea, Matt?
I'm going to give this a 9.
Yep, hard to... I was even tempted to go 9.5. I'm going to stick to the 9. I don't want to let the hype hit me too much on this first one, but 9 out of 10 as well for me.